Hey there, all you beautiful Broadway babies! Welcome back to Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonanni, and this is episode 73 of Broadway Jeopardy. If you love theater, show tunes, and showing off how much you know, then hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. I've got 26 all-new clues ready to test your musical-loving minds, so let's leap right into this week's game. This is Broadway Jeopardy! Taking a peek at this week's categories, we start off as always with last week's Final Jeopardy category, which is Let's Get Gothic, looking at some musicals based on Gothic novels. That's followed by Name Dropping. Here we're looking at some real-life celebrities or famous characters named in various show tunes. After that, we have Order in the Court, looking at some plays and musicals set at least partially during a trial. Then we have Static Musicals. This is a visual category where I'll show you a Broadway poster for a show that looks like it's been on a TV that's staticky, you'll see, and you name the show. And last but not least, we have 1963, looking at some shows that opened during that year. And we end with the Final Jeopardy category, so keep track of your scores if you want to play along, so you can wager some or all of your invisible earnings on that final clue. We start off, of course, with the $200 round, or the overture round as I call it, where the questions start fairly easy to help you rack up some fake dough before I snatch it from you with the harder questions later in the game. Kicking things off in the Let's Get Gothic category, your first $200 clue is... This 1997 Frank Wildhorn musical features the songs Facade, This Is the Moment, and Someone Like You. What is Jekyll and Hyde? There was a revival of Jekyll and Hyde in 2012 starring Konstantin Maroulis in the title roles, with Deborah Cox as Lucy. That revival began as a national tour, with its final stop being Broadway's Marquee Theater. Devotees of this channel may recall that the original run of Jekyll and Hyde was my very first Broadway show. And crazy enough, the revival of the show was the first time I'd seen a Broadway revival of a show I'd seen the original production of. Kind of a nice, poetic symmetry there. Moving on to the name-dropping category, your next $200 clue is... In this long-running musical, Elder Cunningham references many characters, including Darth Vader and Boba Fett, in the song Making Things Up Again. What is the Book of Mormon? The Broadway company of Book of Mormon just had two longtime cast members depart the show. One was Cody Jamison Strand, who has played the role of Elder Cunningham for over 13 years between Broadway, the West End, and national tours of the musical. More times than any other actor, actually. And also leaving the show was Louis Cleal, who has been in the role of Joseph Smith and the missionary president since the musical opened back in 2011. Cleal racked up over 5,000 performances of the show before leaving, which is just incredible. Settle down for the Order in the Court category in the $200 clue. In Chicago, when Roxy is nervous about her trial, lawyer Billy Flynn tells her all she has to do is give him the old this. What is Razzle Dazzle? That Act 2 song really, I think, encapsulates the entire message of the musical.
Though you are stiffer than a girder, they'll let you get away with murder. Razzle dazzle them, and you got a romance.
Your first visual clue in the Static Musicals category for $200 is... What is Rent? I worked the merch for Rent and managed the show for a stretch during the last few months of the musical's Broadway run, and so I was there for all of the closing shenanigans. I was actually filmed selling merch for like 40 minutes one time for a documentary that was going along with the closing performance pro shot, but not a single frame of me made the cut, so... yeah, don't look for me there. But I did get to watch the final performance of Rent standing behind the camera filming the pro shot, so it was really cool to see, the stage, the big picture, but also the monitor, and seeing when they would zoom and pan, and that was a lot of fun. Hey, that's me on the set. Also, one more story, I'll never forget Daphne Rubin Vega getting lost trying to find a closing playbill that had one of the fancy stickers on it, and somehow she ended up in my merch office way up in the rafters of the theater, and I'll always remember scampering around the mez with Daphne Rubin Vega hunting for playbills. Good times. And finishing off the overture round in the 1963 category, your last $200 clue is... this is the rest of the famous first line said by the title character in the musical Oliver that begins with, "Please, sir." What is "I want some more"? More? This is one of those famous quotes that's often misquoted as, "Please, sir, can I have some more?" But it is "I want some more" in both the musical and the original Dickens novel. It joins the ranks of other famous misquoted phrases like "Luke, I am your father" instead of "No, I am your father," or "Mirror, mirror on the wall" instead of "Magic mirror on the wall." I hope you all gave that first round the razzle dazzle. Let's move on to the only slightly harder $400 round now. Circling back to Let's Get Gothic, your first $400 clue is... in The Phantom of the Opera, this is the grandiose diva that the Phantom demands Christine replace as the star of Il Muto. Who is Carlotta? The original Carlotta in the West End was Rosemary Ashe, who also created roles in the original West End companies of Mary Poppins and The Witches of Eastwick. Here on Broadway, the role of Carlotta was originated by Judy Kaye, who won the Tony for the role. The $400 clue in the name-dropping category is... in this musical, the leading lady tells her beauticians to Lauren Bacall her in the song Rainbow High. What is Evita? Okay, so this has nothing to do with the infamous Lauren Bacall me line, but I had this premonition the other day. Picture it, the new revival of Evita with Rachel Ziegler comes to New York and there's some random student matinee with a ton of kids in the audience. Imagine the absolute chaos that will erupt when the kids hear her sing this line from the show. If you know, you know.
Although she's dressed up to the nines, at sixes and sevens with you.
Looking at a play in the Order in the Court category gives us the $400 clue. In the play Inherit the Wind, based on the real-life Scopes monkey trial, a teacher is on trial for teaching this scientific process in his classroom in spite of state laws prohibiting it. What is evolution? The 1955 play was written by Jerome Lawrence and Robert E. Lee. Not the Southern General, the other Robert E. Lee. The same pair would go on to write the play Auntie Mame, as well as the book for the musical adaptation Mame. Inherit the Wind was rejected by 8 separate Broadway producers before finally being produced in Dallas, Texas, and then transferring to Broadway. The play has since been revived 2 times on Broadway, the last time in 2007 starring Christopher Plummer and Brian Dennehy, an excellent production I worked merch for. It's also been filmed 4 times, the last 3 of which were made for TV movies. Don't get fuzzy on the $400 visual clue in the static musicals category. We have... what is Aladdin? Aladdin is of course still going strong here in New York, where it has now played well over 4,000 performances. And the final $400 clue in the 1963 category is... in the 1963 play One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, mental hospital patient Randall McMurphy leads a rebellion against this cold-hearted nurse. Who is Nurse Ratched? The original Broadway production of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest starred Kirk Douglas as Randall McMurphy, along with Joan Tetzel as Nurse Ratched, William Daniels as Dale Harding, and Gene Wilder as Billy Babbitt. There was a revival of the play back in 2001 that starred Gary Sinise as Randall and Amy Morton as Nurse Ratched. Flying right into the $600 round now, back at Let's Get Gothic, your first $600 clue is... this original star of The Phantom of the Opera also starred in another Andrew Lloyd Webber musical based on a Gothic novel, The Woman in White. Who is Michael Crawford? So, like most of my American brethren, I assume I really only knew Michael Crawford from musicals, either on stage like Phantom or Barnum or Woman in White, or film musicals like Hello Dolly. But I recently came across a British TV show I'd never heard of starring Michael Crawford called Some Mothers Do 'Ave 'Em, which ran in the 1970s. Mr. Crawford played the well-meaning but bumbling Frank Spencer who creates chaos wherever he goes, along with his long-suffering wife Betsy. The show featured Crawford, usually in his character's signature beret and trench coat, performing lots of stunts and physical comedy, and Crawford was closely associated with the character of Frank for years, even after starring in the Phantom of the Opera. Any of my British players watching, let me know, is this a well-loved classic show or is it more obscure now?
You promise you won't be angry with me?
Dropping back in the dropping names category brings us the $600 clue. In Little Shop of Horrors, Audrey 2 promises Seymour many things, including a Cadillac car, a guest shot on Jack Parr, and a date with this famous actress of the time. Who is Hedy Lamarr?
How about a date with Hedy Lamarr? You're gonna get it if you want it, baby.
The $600 clue in the Order in the Court category is: during the trial in the musical version of Legally Blonde, Elle has Paulette give fellow classmate Enid this hairstyle and then has her shower to contradict the statements of Chutney, the actual killer. What is a perm? Just as in the original film source, it's Elle's knowledge of hair care, particularly that you can't get a new perm wet, that wins her the big case. But unlike the film, the climactic moment does not occur in the courtroom, but rather in the actual bathroom where the murder took place after the entire court traveled there. Which, not to throw cold water on the musical, no pun intended, why did they have to travel to the actual bathroom just so Enid could wash her permed hair? Couldn't she have just, I don't know, wet her hair in court? Am I reading too much into this musical? Probably. Over in the static musicals category, your $600 visual clue is: what is the color purple? The 2016 revival of the musical starring Jennifer Hudson, Danielle Brooks, and Cynthia Erivo was brilliant, don't get me wrong. But I think a lot of people discount the original production starring LaChanze. Speaking of LaChanze, I don't think she got enough flowers when the film version of the musical came out. I mean, she won the Tony for the role, for goodness sakes, but I remember her being left out of a lot of the discussions about the musical when that film adaptation came out.
Take a deep breath. I'm gonna hold my head up. I'm gonna put my shoulders back and look you straight in the eye. I'm gonna flirt with somebody when they walk by. I'm gonna sing out.
Heading back to 1963, your $600 clue there is: in the suite She Loves Me, George and Amalia begin each letter they unknowingly send to each other with this phrase. What is Dear Friend? It's time to turn up the difficulty level a notch or two with the $800 round now. But before we do, if you're enjoying this week's game, please, oh pretty please, hit that like button for me. It really helps with getting these videos shown to more fine folks like yourselves, but also makes me feel like I've been Lauren Bacalled. Thanks everyone, I truly do appreciate it. Okay, shall we continue?
Please, sir. I want some more.
You got it, kid. $800 round, here we go. Let's get gothic again with the $800 clue. This bloody 1979 musical masterpiece is based on the Penny Dreadful story, The String of Pearls from 1846. What is Sweeney Todd? As the clue stated, Sweeney Todd first came to literary life in 1846 in a Penny Dreadful story. What exactly is a Penny Dreadful story, you ask? Beginning in England in the 1830s, a Penny Dreadful was a serialized story usually involving sensational subjects like killers or thieves or detectives or supernatural entities, things like that. The stories would be published on cheap pulp paper and come out in 10 to 15 page chunks, which would cost a penny. Those ongoing Penny Dreadful stories aimed towards lower class working men were immensely popular in the mid-1800s, being compared to modern video games in terms of popularity with young men. The first Sweeney Todd story, A String of Pearls, was published between 1846 and 1847 and was not, as some have claimed, based on a real murderous barber. Let's go to New Jersey now with the $800 clue in the name-dropping category with In Kimberly Akimbo. Seth says that this famous musician is just okay, which is not a thing to think in New Jersey. Who is Bruce Springsteen? That line comes in the musical's opening song, Skater Planet, which featured a subtle but effective stage trick, where this small ensemble appeared to actually ice skate on the stage. This was achieved with liquid glycerin. The stage itself was coated in liquid glycerin, and the actors would actually dip the blades of their real ice skates in a mixture of glycerin and water as well, which would allow them to glide on the stage, giving the effect of actually ice skating while not tearing up the floor in the process. As the run of the show went on, the young ensemble would become more adept at the almost ice skating and would need their professional grade ice skates sharpened twice a week as they got better with tricks. The next $800 clue in the Order in the Court category is this musical, much of which takes place during a trial, features the songs That's What He Said, This Is Not Over Yet, and You Don't Know This Man. What is Parade? The musical, based on the tragic real-life events surrounding the death of young Mary Fagan and the scapegoating of Leo Frank, opened at Lincoln Center in 1998 with a book by Alfred Urey and a score by Jason Robert Brown, his first on Broadway. Book writer Alfred Urey actually had a personal connection to the story of Leo Frank. He grew up in Atlanta where the real-life events took place, and his great-uncle actually owned the pencil factory where Leo Frank and Mary Fagan worked. The $800 visual clue in the static musicals category is What is Crazy for You? The 1992 new Gershwin musical was really only not really a new musical. It was largely a reworking of the 1933 Gershwin musical Girl Crazy, which originally starred Ginger Rogers and Ethel Merman. The new book was written by Ken Ludwig, the author of plays like Lend Me a Tenor and Moon Over Buffalo. The original cast singing the Gershwin standards consisted of Harry Groener, Michelle Pock, Beth Level, and Jodie Benson, the voice of Ariel in the Little Mermaid film. Besides the pretty tunes, it was the energetic choreography of Susan Stroman that most folks remember today. It was actually her first solo choreography credit on Broadway. And let's get back in our time machines to 1963 with the $800 clue. This Neil Simon comedy follows a free-spirited bride and her new straight-laced husband as they move into a well-worn fifth-floor walk-up apartment. What is Barefoot in the Park? The Neil Simon romantic comedy opened in October of 1963 at the Biltmore Theater, now called the Samuel J. Friedman Theater. It starred Elizabeth Ashley and Robert Redford, who would reprise his role in the 1967 film version alongside Jane Fonda. The Broadway play would run over 4 years and 1,500 performances, making it the longest-running Neil Simon play. It was revived in 2006, starring Amanda Peet and Patrick Wilson. We've reached that point, my friends. The big show, the main event. It's the $1,000 round. Play that dramatic music. Best of luck, players. Circling back one last time to Let's Get Gothic, your first $1,000 clue is this musical, based on the Charlotte Bronte novel of the same name, opened on Broadway in 2000 with Marla Scheffel in the title role. What is Jane Eyre? The musical adaptation of Jane Eyre opened at the Brooks Atkinson Theatre, now called the Lena Horne Theatre, on December 10th, 2000. The score for the new musical was written by Paul Gordon, with John Caird writing the book, and also directed alongside Scott Schwartz. The show garnered praise for its leading lady, but only lukewarm notices for the show itself. It was nominated for Best Musical in 2001, but almost didn't make it to Tony time. It wasn't until a friend of the show's composer, Paul Gordon, purchased over $150,000 worth of tickets to the musical and donated them to various charities that the show managed to limp along until the Tonys, though it would close a week after the awards. The friend that stepped in to try to save the show? Alanis Morissette. The $1,000 clue in the name-dropping category is... in Fame, an angry Serena tells herself to remember these emotions to use later on the stage in the song Think of this acclaimed actress. Who is Meryl Streep?
Think of all the feelings wasted on this creep. Think how you could use them. Think of Meryl Streep.
The closing statement in the Order in the Court category for $1,000 is, in this compelling courtroom drama, Naval Officer Lieutenant Merrick is on trial after forcefully relieving Commanding Officer Lieutenant Queeg of his duties during a storm at sea. What is the Caine Mutiny Court-Martial? The 1953 play by Herman Wouk was an adaptation of his own novel simply titled The Caine Mutiny, which came out in 1951 and won the 1952 Pulitzer for fiction. While the novel covers a long stretch of time, including before the fateful naval voyage, the events leading to the mutiny, and the trial after, the play only covers the trial itself. The original Broadway production starred Henry Fonda as the accused mutineer's defense attorney. It's been revived twice on Broadway in 1983, starring John Rubinstein and J.O. Sanders. Sanders was actually later replaced by none other than football star Joe Namath in his only Broadway acting credit. The show was revived again in 2006, starring Tim Daly, Željko Ivanek, and Friends star David Schwimmer in his so far only Broadway outing. I actually very much enjoyed that production, and I guess I was in the minority because that revival only lasted a little over a month, including previews. The last visual clue in the static musicals category for $1,000 is... what is The Pirate Queen? The Pirate Queen was a short-lived musical from 2007. The epic was based on the real life of 16th century female Irish pirate Grace O'Malley. The musical starred Stephanie J. Block as the Pirate Queen, along with Hadley Fraser, Jeff McCarthy, and Linda Balgord as Queen Elizabeth I. With a score by the team of Alain Boublil and Claude Michel Schonberg, along with Richard Maltby Jr., many critics compared the show to Les Miserables, though not in a good way. Most felt that the musical harkened back to the bombastic British mega musicals of the 80s, whose time they felt had passed. And the curtain call clue in the 1963 category is... this short-lived musical about a young woman stationed in the fictional nation of Doom, while in the Peace Corps, starred Judy Holliday in her final stage role. What is Hotspot? There's an obscure one for you. In the musical satire, Judy Holliday played Sally Hopwinder, a Peace Corps volunteer in the nation of Doom. Wanting to help the people of the impoverished nation, she concocts a plan to get US aid to the country by pretending that Russia is about to invade it. There was top talent behind the scenes of the musical. The book was written by Jack Weinstock and Willie Gilbert, the team who wrote the book for How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, and the score was by Martin Charnin and Mary Rogers. The show just wasn't working though, and several people were brought in to help, including Mary Rogers' good friend Stephen Sondheim, who ended up providing the show's new Act 1 and Act 2 opening numbers. The musical went through 5 different directors and at least 2 choreographers, but on opening night, none of those people wanted credit, and the show had no director or choreographer listed in the playbill. Never a good sign. And with that, we've reached the final Jeopardy round, everyone! Time to tally up your scores and decide how much you want to wager in the category Shows I Haven't Mentioned Yet. This is a returning category where, as it sounds, I'm checking off a few more musicals I've yet to mention on this list. Somehow I haven't mentioned more shows. I can't believe it. Okay, has everyone made their wagers? Jay? Felicia? Tammy? Okay, here is your final clue. This 1968 musical starring Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet, based on the film A Hole in the Head, featured the song I've Gotta Be Me. What is Golden Rainbow? As the clue stated, the musical was based on A Hole in the Head, which told the story of a widowed father who butts heads with his brother, who insists he settle down with a woman. Steve Lawrence was interested in the project, and initially his then wife and partner, Edie Gourmet, was going to play a smaller role, that of a widow who the main character briefly dates. However, it was soon decided that Miss Gourmet should also be a lead, and the brother of the leading man was changed to a sister-in-law, with a romantic plot added for the two as well. And that's this week's game! How did you all fare this week? Were you razzle-dazzling, or was your score penny dreadful? Be sure to let me know in the comments. I love hearing from you guys and seeing your scores. Bit of an announcement, I will be taking next week off to take some time to work on some other fun projects I've got cooking, and I certainly won't be doing it a lot, but in order to work on other things and not get burnt out, I will be taking more weeks off every now and then. I hope you guys understand. I'm sure you do. I love you guys. You guys are the best. And of course, I especially love those fabulous folks over on Patreon. You guys honestly don't know how much your support means to me. If you want to help support the channel, be sure to check out my Patreon using the link in the video description. If you want to connect outside of YouTube, you can find me over on Instagram, or you can email me directly at broadwaybyghostlight@gmail.com. I will see you all in 2 weeks for episode 74, but until then, I'm Mark Benani. This is Broadway by Ghostlight. Thanks for playing.
Please, sir. I want some more.
No, there's no more. Get out of here, kid.